this shit up.
We're recording.
Oh, we are now recording. We're not actually live.
Not live.
We'll be live tomorrow, allegedly, in the Zuckerberg world. But Tony, can you just tell us how fast exactly were you going?
Like about 170, and then super hard as you can possibly brake, as fast as you can brake, and then wham to the right.
170 on a motorcycle feels like a million miles an hour.
I can tell you this, we do like 145 to 150 fairly often at there's a couple tracks around the country and you don't really notice it. Like, you're going quick, but it's crazy. There is a big difference. I've gone a lot faster on a straight line, like on the street or something. And like when you're just on an interstate or something, it really doesn't matter. You could do like 250 and like,
right. It doesn't matter.
If you know, you don't have to make like a hard right as hard as you possibly can in a minute. It's fine. Right.
Yeah.
So but like at Road America is like doing 170 down this street and then having to turn around in your parking lot.
Oh my God.
It's just like get to it as fast as you possibly can.
What do they call it? Like Dead Man's Corner or something?
There's actually two of them. It was a blast. I highly recommend anybody who has sports cars, tracks their car, their motorcycle. I'm upset with myself for years and years, having been this close, 3 hours away from Road America, having never gone. You have to go.
Sounds amazing.
Yeah, so just finding these little Midwest nugs.
Yeah.
That's you like to go fast. No, a lot of people don't think, it's the Midwest. You get snow, you get all this weather. There's probably not cool tracks to go fast, but apparently you can go 170. And sometimes you need to go 170 to get to that showing because houses are still moving extremely fast.
Yeah, you gotta get there. You gotta get your offer in.
This is why he drives fast.
I'm not kidding. I took my vet the last 2 days because I had stuff stacked up and whatever. I mean, insurance agent probably didn't want to hear this.
Yeah, probably not.
But we had to make it to them shows. We cover such a large area. Actually, Tyler, myself, and Eric. There's times that we'll be west of Joliet, and then we have to get to Valparaiso, and then we've got to get back to South Holland. And it's fine. We're very relationally based, which is why we cover this big of an area. So, but yes, scheduling is very difficult. So sometimes you got to fly.
Look at that. I'm going to guess that you might be the only agent that we've talked to that actually does driver training to get to the listing appointments or the showings on time. But market is moving. However, today we want to talk about, we'll call it the first Rusty Putter family, or a celebration of a family that just did it right and followed every plan that we've ever talked about. And fortunately used all three of us for the mortgage, agent representation, and Adam's team for insurance. I think the entire piece of this started with they had reached out to Tony and had kind of a pretty serious financial issue going on and didn't really get the proper advice from their first real estate agent, I don't think. Tony pushes them over to me. We have a conversation and talk through it. And they just, after the conversation, just decided, you know what, now might not be the right time, but let's lay the groundwork so that when the right time does come, you are fully prepared and you can buy the right house. And I think when that initial conversation was had, these guys maybe were pre-approved for about, or could qualify for about $350,000. Fast forward 7-8 months, and they're able to buy $500,000. Which I think at this point we're starting to see the price point in Northwest Indiana outside. Like if you're south of 80, it's probably middle 400s to really qualify for something for a family. Would you agree, Tony?
Absolutely. Early 400s. As a matter of fact, we got a property under contract late last night. I just sent out the contract to you this morning. Early 400s, nice house. But that's really the stuff that we were seeing less than that was really, we were dealing with a lot of garbage. But getting back to our mutual clients, when they were in the midst of their household financial and credit emergency, this was like 2.5 years ago. Okay. I start with the finish line in mind. Okay. Yeah. We have this huge problem and we have this house we have to sell, but what is the finish line? The finish line is we have to get through this somehow. And at some stage, we have to get this family into a house that will work for them in the area that they need to be in or want to be in. All right. So we had some difficult things to get through, but that's why we're often, even if I'm selling your house, we're often talking a lot more about where you're going and how you're going to get there. And unless somebody's cash, right, we're usually saying like, look, I can figure out what the house is worth. And no matter what the difficulty of the situation is, I'm going to be able to get the house sold and all of that. But what we need to figure out is where is the money at? All right. So we handled on my end, okay, these are the steps to get the house done, but how are we going to get you in a position to be able to buy as soon as possible? Now, the financial emergency was so severe that, the family ended up, being out of a house and renting for a couple of years. They knew that this was going to happen. And man, through talking to Tony Perri Jr., and I add that word Tony's, I got a deal right now with 3 Tonys on it. They were able to understand clearly the steps, the actual steps, and not bad advice. And I tell people all the time, I said, he's never talked to him. He's never gotten it wrong with one of my clients. So,
but sometimes it's like, they just don't want to listen. Right. So like, I'm sure the timelines that you're giving them were realistic, and a lot of people don't want that. They want it right now. And you have to be like, listen, this might be an 18-month, a 2-year path. It sounds like they listen.
And they list. The biggest problem for them was looking at this, and they were very embarrassed about the situation. Well, ironically, I have been through the exact same situation where an employer goes belly up. They leave you with a huge, a bunch of debt on your personal credit because they couldn't pay out your expense reports, and it destroys things. So like, it was a very, as I'm talking to them, I'm like, not only are you guys in confident hands with navigating the mortgage process, but you're talking to someone who has just recently been through a horrible situation with a previous employer. I'm happy to talk you guys through this. And like the conversation quickly went, like, it was an unbelievable, holy cow, this guy can talk about it, but let's still maybe go online and like go into the deep interwebs and type in our situation. And all it is you can't get a mortgage till this. You can't do this until this. And Tony and I had just did this with a customer maybe 4 or 5 months earlier, walked through the entire process and said, no, we actually can do this. A lot of people get afraid of it because if you don't know how to navigate mortgage guidelines, it's not a pleasant process. But we have the conversation, right? Right now, today, in that initial conversation, you guys are only going to qualify for this. If we wait 8 or 9 months and work through this and this, you guys are going to qualify for upwards of $500,000. And they didn't want to necessarily spend $500,000, but
well, that's the real value. And I tell people all the time with the folks that I refer you to, insurance people, especially on the mortgage guys, but it's very similar, right? There's criteria, there's underwriting criteria, and most banks, most insurance agencies have access to very similar things. However, the individual is so important because it's their ability to know all of what is out there and be able to see the path through you. This is the difference when we get somebody who's new or maybe who hasn't learned enough about what all of these different avenues and underwriting criterias are. It's much more they're going to rely on what the computer says or what it spits out based off of your situation now. I remember way back to when I was writing mortgages, I learned that a lot of times the best mortgage guys are actually pointing out to the underwriters how something can work, because there are so many different layers of what if this, then that, if this, then that. And the super talented guys in respective fields are the ones who consistently figure out the best pathway through that. Now, these clients who are closing, it's kind of wild. I don't think they ever thought they'd be in this position. We're closing on a real nice house in Northwest Indiana with 20% down, okay, and money to spare. It makes me feel so good to see. I was the wife, and they were looking at window treatments. They have the money to buy window treatments. They have the money to buy furniture. They have all of these things, and they really bit the bullet, did exactly what we said and more. And it's going to feel so good to see these people in a house.
How long are we talking? What was
I
the
think it was a year and a half.
Yep.
Was it 2 years?
It was
or a
almost
year and a half?
18 months, and they were a little ahead
blink
of
of an
schedule.
eye?
We actually put together, it was a 2-year plan, and they got it done in a year and a half. And as we're going through this, though, right? Like we know on the mortgage side, we know how to walk through it. Well, I'm like, we've also dealt with some, and we've talked about this, some insurance situations. Like, you guys got to get in touch with Adam's team right now, so that when we put some numbers together, that we know that you're not going to have a budget buster on insurance. We want to make sure that you have proper insurance coverage. We've probably talked about this a million times now, but new construction insurance on a house probably saves you a few bucks, right? Because there's not that whole roof situation.
Well, yeah, new construction is a lot less to insure. Why? Because it is less likely to have a loss. You're literally building to 2025 or 2026 codes in 2024. So there's less plumbing issues, there's less fire hazards. So a house, the premium on a house is actually determined more by what year it was built than how big it is, or it's crazy. And people are like, wait, this is just a 2,200 square foot house in South Holland. I'm like, yeah, but it was built in 1923. It's going to be triple a 4,000 square foot house in Indiana that was built in 2024. So interesting little tidbit.
It's, again, these people, they just needed the guidance. They needed the right people to have that conversation with, because they're insured. Oh, well, you guys had that in your bet. We can't insure you.
What is the impact? Is there a percentage impact that credit score has on homeowners insurance?
It's a large impact. So it's proprietary, right? So we don't know. When I click the button, I don't get to see it, but I know that there's more factors like your loss history, your credit, and not necessarily like your credit score, because it's a different score. There's different scores for credit. The age of the house, and then that's mostly what's going on there. The other thing that people don't realize is claims follow the person, not the property. So there might have been a total fire loss at this address 2 years ago, but if it wasn't you, then it doesn't affect you.
Okay,
which is interesting.
Before we dive into the whole representation of agent representation in new construction, we always talk about having the plan and the budget and the numbers and the real expectation. So I wanted to show everyone here where this conversation started. So we had a conversation with these guys, right? Talk about their budget, and starting out with, we want to be $120,000 all into this transaction. So July 16th, this is new construction, so we're waiting for the house to get finished up. Put together a loan estimate, say, hey guys, this is where we're going to be at. This is what your likely interest rate's going to be. I think that you probably showed them that house in like July 12th or something, and we worked out some numbers and talked through it. But that's the initial loan estimate, right? So the initial numbers, we go to the next page when we lock their interest rate in. Look at that, 5.625.
Wow.
So everyone, do you want to talk about timing the market, timing rates? I locked that interest rate before the Fed rate cut.
Oh, wow. Nice.
There was a conversation with the customers, like, you guys have to trust me. I promise what we're going to run into here is going to create a problem. We want to just take the money when it's there, right? But we can't. We got the slide thing showing up on here. But all throughout the entire process, we didn't deviate more than $700, $800 from my initial conversation of what you guys would need at closing to the actual number due at closing date. And why is that important? Because I hear it all the time in our industry, and I'm sure you guys have dealt with it with other customers. The easy conversation is, well, your down payment's $55,000. And not talk about closing costs.
Man, all the time. So like every lender that I've pretty much worked with, even one that was really pretty good, it was always difficult for the clients to get a really realistic idea of what it was going to be. They're always using those estimates. And then what a lot of the bigger shops, like the big companies, will do is they make everything worst case scenario, right? Because they're trying to cover their liability. And the originator that you're talking to can't really edit that because he'll lose his job. So you really don't know. And it can often scare people away. Where I've noticed your worksheets that say how much it's going to cost is much more realistic. This is what it's actually going to cost you. So that's really been a big one to help our clients plan and a lot of times get over the hurdles. People oftentimes think the closing costs are going to be way more than what they actually are. I know you run into the problem that people don't think that they're going to be less than what they are. I run into the reverse of it. I mean, people tell me they think it's going to be like $25,000, $30,000 or crazy, something like that on like a $300,000 purchase. And I'm like, no, it's nowhere near that. We'll get you with Tony and we'll figure out exactly what it is.
Again, that all stems from just consistent relationships too. Hey, you guys go get a quote from insurance from Adam, right? So now we know insurance is $1,500 for the year and not $3,000 for the year, and having those early on conversations. But the other piece of this, I think this is very, very important in Northwest Indiana, where we're at right now. Continued existing inventory is almost non-existent at this point.
Yeah, so I've been watching, there's a couple markets that I watch. One that I watch fairly commonly is Munster, Dyer, Highland, really Munster, Dyer, Highland, St. John, Cedar Lake, kind of right along the border there. Okay. And I pull a report it pulls automatically, but I try to look at it daily. And I'm looking at $250,000 to $500,000 new listings of single family homes. That's it. I don't include townhomes or anything else, just because, this on the borders, the area, we have a lot of clients that want to move to, and we'll be seeing, we used to see several come on a week. I mean, we should see 20 to 25, 30 come on a week and sell. And we've gone, over the summer, we'd go a week and a half, 2 weeks with nothing new coming on and that's a pretty giant range and a pretty large geographic. So it's ticked up slightly because right now people want to be in the house by Thanksgiving or Christmas. Right now we can still get you in by Thanksgiving. Okay. Christmas, to be in by Christmas or New Year's, you're going to need to be under contract by Thanksgiving weekend. Okay. And then stuff's going to stop. So there's always an uptick in activity right now. My top 3 best months out of my career are all December's, right?
No
People
kidding.
closing then.
Trying to get it in before the holiday.
Yeah. So what we're going to have there, and I recommend if you want to buy or sell, I mean, if you're a seller, you're probably a buyer too. This is a great time because really, as a seller, then your next best time is going to be the 4th week in February and the first 2 weeks in March. And that's still dead of winter. And people always think springtime, and springtime's not true. Springtime's when everybody else goes to sell. All right. Now we can probably do pretty well as a seller then. All right. One, it's a little bit of a pain to get the house listed. Then it's cold outside, right? Photography doesn't look quite as nice. You might have snow on the ground. Things are dead. You're just
not green. They're living.
It's a little bit more difficult than now. So in the buyers that you end up with, though, they're great because they're what we call the hangover buyers. These are the people that weren't able to get it together by Thanksgiving or Christmas this year. Yeah. And they're back in the market. Everything good, sold off. Now we're not really in that situation right now because we don't have this much inventory. So who knows how it's going to go. But it's usually best to try to do it right now. But if you can't, it's going to punch you out to March. All right. Which brings us to representation in your agent. We wanted to touch on that briefly. We talk about the skill sets of individuals. With me in new construction, all right, a lot of people, the builders are interesting because you drive past the subdivision, you see the sales center. Hey, you can just pop in and they're always very nice to you. What people need to know is almost all of these large builders have already accounted for a buyer's agency fee to be paid. And in the last year and a half, we've seen that it's pretty strong. I mean, I don't know an agent who has their own buyer's agency fee that the new construction builders aren't covering. Okay. So in a sense, you can get us for free. If you don't use one of us, they're not passing the savings on to you. Mm-hmm. They're pocketing it.
That person that seems like they're your friend when you go to that center. Oh, wait, we got your back. They work for the builder, right?
Right.
It's like, so when we used to live in the city, we would always hire a leasing agent. And guess who covered that? The person that owned the unit would already account for.
Absolutely.
I've got to pay. So they are doing all this work that we would have been doing. Same thing with this new purchase of a new construction. You're giving up free representation if you do it yourself. Why wouldn't you pay for this brain here? Why wouldn't you?
Yeah, and it's a second set of eyes. And in Indiana, it's not common for us to have attorneys involved in real estate transactions. So, people say, well, like, I could have my attorney look at it. And you could, and every attorney will tell you he does residential real estate. I don't care if the guy never did it once, because they view it as something simple, and it is, but what makes the difference is the nuances. Okay. And you want somebody that's been in there on that contract and knows how to squeeze it, knows where you can squeeze it, know where you can get out, where your leverage is and where it isn't.
Sure.
Right. And it's worth it to have that sort of stuff. We actually had some issues while we were under construction. I don't even know if you heard of them. They put a window in the wrong spot.
Whoops.
And I was surprised. Big builder locally, man, they did a great job. They moved it for us, but it helps to, if you run into a situation like that, how do you bring it up to the builder? Do you bring it up? What does this look like?
Right.
Yeah, does a builder, oh, that's actually a change. You missed this over here, so it's actually a change order. Now you have to pay the fee for it. But I think like there's this large misconception of, I'm just going to go to the builder directly because they'll cut out the agent's fee or the agent representation. And as Tony said, it's already baked in. I mean, these guys aren't building the amount of homes that they're building without a very strong economic model and a budget. So that builder's rep, we hear it all the time in the morning, oh, I'm just going to go to my bank because they care. And it's like, your bank at Chase. I promise you, Jamie Dimon doesn't care about you. he's literally come out and said he doesn't ever want to write a 30-year mortgage again. So you have that, but you call any of us and you're my customer. You're part of the brotherhood. I mean, yesterday, or I guess this will actually be 2 days ago now when this comes out, but Adam and I spent a day with 2 past customers hanging out, supporting an important cause, Birdies for Babies, for a mutual customer who had received a grant for in vitro. Like, we're that type of guy, those type of guys that come out and play around a golf with you and hang out and celebrate something that is awesome and monumentally life-changing for you. I don't think your Chase guy's coming out there for that. I don't think the builder's rep is coming out there to celebrate that kind of thing.
I'm going to make them ride race bikes.
That's
So
good,
you
man.
golf with your other people. You're coming racing with me.
I'm going to go 40 miles an hour.
I feel like I'm going 100. You're like Ricky Bobby. You're going 10.
I think though, you know what, the whole thing though, we're always harping about contact us. The example of this couple and this family is that they were in what I think most people and most families would think is probably worst situation you could end up in, and got with us at the depth of it. And tomorrow, which is today, whenever you're watching this, we'll be culminating a 1.5 years worth of work that was really supposed to be 2 years. And it worked out. And then, so, the right people, and then on buying new construction, just remember that these builders, even a lot of the custom guys, will build in something for the guy to have an agent. They appreciate it too, though, because we can be a conduit that's probably a little bit more efficient than a person that's never dealt with it and dealing with them. So a lot of them they're okay with having it. They've already built in the cost, and we can do some things like you probably wouldn't think of, like like know when we can get a credit and when we can't. All right. The average guy is just going to ask for it. They say no, and they say, okay, sign here. All right. And it just dies. Right. So we were able to negotiate some things for them as well. That I don't think you'd get on your own, and issues like a window's in the wrong spot, kind of work them through that. There's a lot that can be done there. So the right team can make it happen.
It's peace of mind. I think the emotional roller coaster of buying a house is already, it's pretty wavy, but when you're building one, I think there's like an extra level of emotion that goes into that, because it's your design. Like you're laying out every little bit of it, and then just having someone there to execute the mechanics of it. Because again, you built 1-2 houses in your entire lifetime. Tony sells 20, 30 new construction houses in a year. So you just have that pedigree and the knowing where every spot goes. And then obviously everyone's talking about insurance costs and everything else right now. Don't be afraid of the new construction game. There's a lot of different pieces of the financing that goes into that, but it's here to stay. It's not going anywhere. I mean,
what about custom builds? For you, actually, I just thought of this as he was saying this. Do you insure a project while it's under construction?
Yes.
Okay.
So usually the builder carries that policy, but sometimes the builder passes that off onto the purchaser, and that'll be written up in their contract.
Okay.
But it's called a builder's risk policy. So you're just ensuring, like, while that thing's under construction, if something were to happen, which, by the way, is exposed. So tornado comes through, it's more likely to get lost. But yeah, that's always a part of the contract.
Right. So, and the only reason I bring that up is, you know, I know you built new construction, sort of a custom house or whatever. And if you're watching this and you're thinking, well, you know, I'm not one of these mega builder guys, right? We can still walk you through that process, acquisition of the lot. And a lot of times, you know, you'll find like a renter's policy or something on a condo that you're renting. You don't really need it, a contents policy, but it's nice to have it. When we're doing new construction, there's been a lot of guys come into the custom home builder market in the last 5 years, okay, of varying different scales. Yeah, I think that it's important to take a look at what type of insurance that guy has.
So important.
Okay?
No one looks at it.
Nobody looks at it, because the deal is this, is if this guy's got 4 houses going on, which is a lot for a custom home builder, okay, one thing slightly the other way financially, something happens to a property, it can take this guy out. All right. We want, and if it's your house,
it could be something simple too, like drywall costs, or something's not available, and so you have to carry costs for further. And this guy's working on a margin that's like this big. It could put him
absolutely. It could put him under. The other thing it can do, though, is it can dramatically delay. All right, in these bigger communities, all right, with the big builders, it's pretty systematic as to when we're going to close. Okay, and we're trying to deliver a seamless, smooth closing, you know, so that you can plan ahead. The further custom that we get, the harder that is to put out. But one of the things that you can do to put some greater confidence in closing timeline is make sure that insurance is in place, and that you have something that will cover things that possibly the builder's insurance may miss.
Yeah.
And that's definitely something you want to think about in the grand scheme. I mean, you know, the banks will give you, what is it, usually 10% in variance on what it is, right? Because they know that your kitchen, you could easily swing $30,000 difference over the budget, right? Just by a few, this, that, and the next 30 grand. Okay. So you're gonna whiz away 10 grand on some silly options and possibly another 30 on some things in the kitchen. It's going to be worth considering spending a couple bucks to have this whole project sort of insured correctly.
Yes, and you're getting into the bond world, right? So a surety bond or performance bond, which is pretty interesting stuff. Like, this guy said he did what he said he was going to do. If he doesn't, then the insurance company is going to make it whole. Happens all the time, like in the city. Like, you know, they figured out they had to move an elevator because of ADA things, and then the person in the bond department or the city like permit waited 3 years. Like, it happens all the time. Saw in COVID, the electrical switches, they couldn't get them. So like, someone was going to build a new construction like neighborhood, they couldn't get the electrical box to get the electricity there. There's an 18-month delay. Like, it just happens all the time.
Wow. Well, we can bring you through that too, though. So I just want to make sure people know that this doesn't just apply to the big lender, the big builders. No. You can go and pick your stuff out, and it's a little bit more complex with more of a custom home type of thing. You want to get with us early on, certainly develop a solid game plan, and we can get you to that finish line. But it takes kind of all of us in concert.
It's I think the biggest thing that we can stress in the celebration of the closing of this great family is they weren't afraid to ask the questions. And initially they were a little embarrassed to ask them, but they were not afraid as we got through the process to ask questions and say, well, how come someone else said this? Well, because that person doesn't work through this in every situation, whether it be the insurance, the representation. I mean, for me, these people were literally going through the same thing with a past employer, and then also wanting to buy a new construction house in Indiana. Well, I've done that. I've had the employer problem. I've built a house in Indiana. It's, you know, and you want to talk about the value of the conversation about the value of an agent. I don't get the lot where my house is built without the guy sitting next to me. Like, that's just the extra little connection there that got the house there's a lot that my wife wanted. Peace of mind. Divorce is a lot cheaper than
Happy
everything
wife.
else.
Happy wife.
Happy
cool.
wife, happy life. That's it. I don't anything else you guys got?
No, I'm just realizing right now that your computer thinks we're in California time here, but
Oh, perfect. Well,
Anyways.
it identifies as West Coast.
all right, no, I'm good. Thanks.
Adam, anything?
No, rock out. See you guys
Google
next
Tony
week.
Mitidiero. You can spell his name right or wrong. You find him. Adam is my agent. Catch me at applywithjr.com. We'll catch you guys next week.
Peace.